Let me be clear with you. A dismissive avoidant doesn't hate love. They fear it. They fear what it does to their control, their identity, their carefully built walls. And if you've ever felt confused, discarded, or emotionally shut out by someone you love, this isn't your fault. But understanding these 7 private behaviors is your first step to taking your power back. ChatGPT said dismissive avoidants didn't choose to become emotionally distant. They became that way as a survival strategy. What looks like coldness or detachment on the outside is often deep-rooted fear on the inside. When someone with this attachment style starts to emotionally shut down, they're not trying to hurt you or punish you. They're doing what they've always done when emotions run high, protect themselves from feeling overwhelmed, exposed, or out of control. In relationships, this shutdown can feel like a slap in the face. 1 minute, things are going well. You're connecting, sharing, maybe even being vulnerable together, and then suddenly they're gone. Quiet, pulled back, short texts, emotionally blank. It feels personal. It feels like rejection. But here's the truth. It's not you. It's the wiring of someone who learned, often at a young age, that emotional connection wasn't safe, reliable, or consistent. Maybe they were raised in an environment where expressing needs led to disappointment, or where being vulnerable was met with criticism or neglect. Over time, they built walls instead of bridges. They told themselves, I don't need anyone, because needing someone had become dangerous. When you're in a relationship with someone like this, it's tempting to try to break down those walls. You try to show them that you're safe, that you care, that you won't leave. But every time you move closer, they may pull away. That's the paradox. The more you reach out emotionally, the more their internal alarm system goes off. To them, intimacy isn't comfort, it's a threat. It's a doorway into pain they've long buried, and getting too close forces them to feel emotions they've spent a lifetime avoiding. That's why their reaction often looks extreme or even cruel. They disconnect, not because they don't care, but because they care more than they know how to handle. So what do? The first thing is this: stop taking it personally. Their shutdown is not proof that you're unlovable or unworthy. It's proof that they're struggling with their own emotional limitations. It's not a reflection of your value. It's a reflection of their fear. Once you realize that, you stop chasing them. You stop over-explaining yourself, trying to get them to see you, or walking on eggshells to keep the peace. Because every time you silence your own needs just to maintain the connection, you abandon yourself. And self-abandonment never leads to real love. Instead, honor your emotions, set healthy boundaries. If they need space, give it without resentment, but also without shrinking your own needs. You can respect their process without participating in their pattern. That's the balance. That's your power. And sometimes, when you stop trying to fix them and start focusing on your own growth, they notice. They feel the shift, and maybe, just maybe, that becomes the mirror they need to begin healing. But whether they change or not is not your job. Your job is to protect your energy, your peace, and your emotional well-being. Understanding the emotional shutdown of a dismissive avoidant is about seeing through the surface. It's about realizing that behind the silence is someone scared of feeling, someone terrified of loss, someone who built a fortress because they never had a safe place to fall. But remember, you are not the therapist, the fixer, or the emotional sacrifice. You're the one who chooses whether to wait behind their walls or to walk forward into the life you deserve, with or without them. One of the most misunderstood patterns in dismissive avoidance is their deep craving for control, especially when it comes to emotional and physical closeness. On the surface, they may seem indifferent, self-contained, or even emotionally detached. But beneath that exterior is a complex need to regulate their environment so they never feel too vulnerable, too dependent, or too out of control. This becomes most obvious during moments of intimacy where their true conflict begins to show. Dismissive avoidants desire connection just like anyone else. They're not robots. They want to be loved, touched, understood, but they want it all on their terms they can manage without feeling emotionally exposed. So when things are going too well, when the relationship feels close or even emotionally intense, they start to feel the walls closing in. They fear being engulfed. They feel like they're losing control of the emotional dynamic, and that triggers deep discomfort. That's when the push-pull begins. They might pull away, start arguments, go cold, or withdraw completely. Not because they don't care, but because the closeness is activating something inside them that they don't know how to face. This desire for control shows up in subtle but consistent ways. For example, they may initiate intimacy, but then suddenly seem emotionally unavailable right afterward. They might plan dates or reach out when they feel ready, but go silent when you initiate. They may respond positively to affection one day and appear cold the next. These inconsistencies aren't random. They are a form of emotional regulation. The avoidant wants to stay safe by being the one in charge of how much intimacy enters their life. When you start to lead the emotional connection, when you start asking for more, expressing needs, or showing vulnerability, it challenges their grip on control, and that's when they pull back. It's crucial to understand that this control isn't about manipulation. It's about fear. Control is their coping mechanism. If they can control the flow of intimacy, they believe they can control their emotions, prevent pain, and avoid disappointment. Many of them learned early in life that closeness led to letdowns or abandonment. So now, as adults, they don't let anyone get close enough to hurt them. And ironically, that very strategy is what keeps them from experiencing the love they secretly want. For you, the partner, friend, or loved one on the receiving end, this behavior can be incredibly confusing and painful. It feels like walking through a maze with no exit. Just when you think you've reached a breakthrough, they shut the door. But here's the truth. You are not responsible for maintaining their sense of control. Your responsibility is to your own emotional safety. If they're uncomfortable with your honesty, your needs, or your desire for connection, that doesn't mean you have to tone yourself down. You can be compassionate without betraying yourself. You can hold space for their discomfort without silencing your truth. This dynamic only becomes toxic when you start shrinking to stay in their frame. When you start thinking, if I just hold back a little more, maybe they'll stay. You are reinforcing their control and sacrificing your own emotional need. That's not love, that's survival mode. Real love exists where both people feel free to express, connect, and grow, not where one person constantly adjusts to avoid triggering the other's fear. So what do? You respect their space, yes, but you also set clear boundaries. You communicate your needs, and most of all, you stay rooted in your self-worth. You are allowed to want connection. You are allowed to desire emotional depth. And if someone can't meet you there, that's not a sign that you're too much. It's a sign that they're not ready. Let their need for control be their journey. Yours is to choose love without losing yourself. Dismissive avoidants rarely communicate their emotional struggles directly. Instead, they test boundaries and people silently through distance, withdrawal, and subtle shifts in behavior. This is one of the most frustrating private behaviors you'll encounter if you're close to someone with this attachment style. Instead of talking through problems, they pull back to see what you'll do. They may suddenly become unavailable, delay their responses, cancel plans, or act emotionally indifferent. What's actually happening underneath is not indifference. It's a test. They're asking, without saying it aloud, will you chase me? Will you still be here if I disappear? This behavior often stems from a deep fear of abandonment masked by emotional self-sufficiency. Dismissive avoidants have taught themselves that they don't need anyone, but deep down they want to know that someone will stay. The problem is that they're so afraid of being vulnerable and asking for reassurance that they use distance as a coping tool. If they create emotional space and you fill it by chasing, over-explaining, or trying harder, it gives them a sense of security. They feel like they can maintain closeness without ever having to admit they need it. That's the twisted comfort zone they operate in. But what does this look like in a relationship? It looks like ghosting after an emotional conversation. It looks like suddenly going cold after a moment of closeness. It looks like mixed signals, saying they care one day and acting aloof the next. And if you're emotionally open, this behavior can leave you feeling constantly confused, anxious, and desperate for clarity. You find yourself reading between the lines, obsessing over their messages, second-guessing every word you say. That's because their silent testing triggers your own fear of rejection or not being good enough. The hardest part is that when you confront them, they often deny anything's wrong. They'll say, "I'm just busy," or "nothing happened," or even flip it back on you for being too emotional. And yet, deep down, you know something has shifted. This denial keeps you stuck in a cycle of self-doubt. But here's what you need to know. Their silence is communication. Their pullback is a message. And if you keep trying to decode their behavior instead of honoring your own emotional needs, you'll lose yourself trying to win someone who's not playing fair. So how do you respond to these silent tests? You stop participating in the game. When they pull away, don't chase. When they create distance, don't fill the gap with more effort. Instead, match their energy with calm, grounded presence, not to punish them, but to protect yourself. You're not abandoning them. You're simply refusing to abandon yourself. That's where your power lies. Because here's the truth. People reveal themselves when you stop chasing. And if someone truly values you, your absence will speak louder than your constant availability ever could. And let's be clear, this isn't about manipulation. This is about integrity. You have the right to want clarity. You have the right to emotional consistency. If someone disappears to see if you'll follow, let your silence answer their silence. If they test your love by pulling away, let them see that your love doesn't mean you'll tolerate emotional games. Real love is mutual. Real connection is reciprocal. You are not here to prove your worth through emotional endurance. It can be painful to stop showing up for someone who keeps withdrawing, but choosing peace over chaos is not weakness. It's growth. Let their distance reveal the truth, and then make a decision not based on fear or longing, but based on self-respect. You deserve a relationship where presence isn't a test, where communication isn't a mystery, and where love isn't something you have to earn by staying through silence. Let them go if they keep pulling away, not because you don't care, but because you care about yourself enough to stop settling for half love. One of the most confusing and emotionally draining behaviors of a dismissive avoidant is how they can engage in physical intimacy without offering emotional closeness. To the outside world and even to their partners, it may look like they're connecting deeply, especially during romantic or sexual moments. But afterwards, something shifts. They pull away, go silent, become emotionally distant, or act as though nothing meaningful happened. It leaves their partner wondering, was that real? Did it mean anything to them? And this pattern is one of the most heartbreaking for anyone trying to build a real connected relationship with them. For dismissive avoidants, physical intimacy is often a safer channel for connection than emotional vulnerability. Touch doesn't scare them the way emotions do. Sex, kissing, flirting, these are moments where they can feel close without needing to expose their inner world. But here's the kicker. While they're touching your body, they may still be protecting their heart. That's the emotional disconnect. They're present physically, but not emotionally. And for the person on the receiving end, this feels incredibly disorienting. It's like being drawn in and pushed away at the same time. This behavior usually stems from early experiences where emotional closeness was either unreliable, painful, or non-existent. If they grew up in environments where emotional expression wasn't encouraged or was even punished, They learned to separate love from vulnerability. They learned that physicality was acceptable, but true emotional expression was risky. So now, as adults, they replicate that pattern. They can lie in bed next to you and still feel the need to emotionally armor themselves. They might even be affectionate and loving in the moment, but once the vulnerability of the experience wears off, their defenses come back online. And here's what you need to understand. This isn't about deception. They're not playing you or trying to manipulate. In fact, many dismissive avoidants don't fully understand that they're doing this. To them, it feels normal. They may not even realize the emotional void they're creating because they've never had a model for true emotional intimacy. So when you bring it up, when you say things like, I feel disconnected afterward, or it feels like you're shutting down, they might respond with confusion, frustration, or even defensiveness. That's because emotional awareness is a skill they often haven't developed. If you're in a relationship with someone like this, it can cause you to start questioning yourself. You might begin to feel used, or worse, believe that your emotional needs are unreasonable. But here's the truth. You are not asking for too much when you want emotional connection alongside physical closeness. That's not needy, that's human. And if someone can't meet you in that space, it's not your responsibility to train them, fix them, or keep shrinking your needs just to maintain peace. What you can do is get clear about your own boundaries. You have to decide what kind of connection you want. If being close physically without emotional presence leaves you feeling empty, that's important. Speak your truth. You can express your needs without blaming, shaming, or demanding. Simply say, this kind of connection is meaningful to me, but I need to feel emotionally safe too. Their response will tell you a lot, whether they're open to growing or committed to staying walled off. And if they consistently can't or won't go deeper with you, it's okay to walk away, not as a punishment, but as an act of self-respect. You deserve more than momentary closeness. You deserve someone who chooses to show up emotionally, consistently, and with intention. In closing, you shouldn't consider the downside. It's the definition of impossible because it's always a myth. Sometimes it's real, but most of the time it's an imaginary thing. Physical touch is easy. True intimacy, the kind that says, I see you, I choose you, I care for your heart, that's rare, and that's what you're worthy of. The final and perhaps most emotionally conflicting behavior of a dismissive avoidant is how they respond to emotional honesty. When you open your heart, share your feelings, express your needs, or speak your truth, they often pull back. They may get cold, dismissive, or even accuse you of being too sensitive or too much. And yet, here's the twist. That very emotional honesty is what they secretly long for. Deep down, they crave the emotional connection they were taught to fear. It's the paradox that defines their inner world. They run from what they need most. This reaction usually stems from their past. For dismissive avoidants, emotional expression was rarely modeled or welcomed in childhood. Maybe they had caregivers who were emotionally unavailable, inconsistent, or even punitive. Over time, they learned to suppress feelings to survive. Vulnerability became a risk, not a strength. So now, as adults, when someone expresses raw emotion, their instinct is to pull away, to shut down, or to minimize the moment. It's not because they don't care. It's because their nervous system is wired to associate emotional exposure with threat or chaos. So when you, as someone who loves them, show up authentically, when you say, this hurt me, or I feel disconnected, or I want more closeness, it shakes them. They may see your honesty as pressure or criticism, even when it's coming from a place of love. They feel exposed, even if they're not the one being vulnerable. And that discomfort causes them to retreat. To you, it feels like abandonment. To them, it feels like protection. This dynamic becomes a painful loop. You reach out for connection, they pull back. You feel rejected, and they feel overwhelmed. But here's the truth. Your emotional honesty is not the problem. In fact, it's the only thing real in that moment. It's the anchor in a sea of avoidant confusion. And when you silence that honesty just to keep them close, you begin to betray yourself. You start filtering your emotions, choosing your words too carefully, avoiding conflict, and pretending you're okay just to avoid pushing them away. And that's how you lose your voice. That's how you lose your power. What dismissive avoidants need, though they rarely admit it, is a partner who refuses to play small. Someone who says, I'm going to be honest about what I feel, even if it makes you uncomfortable. That doesn't mean yelling or blaming. It means being grounded in your truth. It means loving them without abandoning yourself. Because emotional honesty is not weakness, it's leadership. And if they can't meet you there, that's not a failure on your part, it's clarity. Ironically, your honesty might be the very thing that begins to shift them. When they see that vulnerability doesn't equal chaos, when they feel the safety of your emotional maturity, they may slowly start to open up. But that only happens when you lead with strength, not fear, when you stop shrinking to fit inside their comfort zone. And even if they don't change, your clarity will. You'll begin to see that love isn't about proving yourself to someone emotionally unavailable. It's about choosing yourself enough to walk away if they can't meet you in the middle. You deserve a relationship where emotional honesty is not punished, but welcomed, where your truth is not too much but deeply valued, where you don't have to guess, hide, or chase. The real power is in staying true to who you are. Because when you do that, you give others the chance to rise and meet you there. And if they can't, you'll know you honored yourself. You'll know you chose truth over fear. And that is the foundation of real love. Listen, you don't need to chase someone who's running from themselves. You need to choose you over confusion, over silence, over emotional starvation. You are not here to prove your worth to someone afraid to receive love. You are here to rise in it, own it, and attract someone who honors it. This is your permission to let go and take your power back.